What's good, everybody out there on YouTube? This is your man, Shattuck Stick, dropping some hot frog on this mic. Today, we're going to be talking about Joe Rogan and the thing he said about video games recently, and it's just something I wanted to chime in on. I think it's an interesting topic, and I guess I'm not going to say it's really a debate because what I believe he said wasn't, right in even a little bit, but I do think there's a better take on it than some of the takes people have been having, and I don't think people are actually looking at where he is coming from himself. So with that being said, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe to, keep updated and notified whenever I upload. And also, thank you guys for 4K. I haven't uploaded or anything because things have happened in my life, and I haven't been able to make content, essentially. But, now your boy's back, and now he's able to do that. So with that, out of the way, let's begin.
Here I go.
So if you guys have been living under a rock and you don't know who Joe Rogan is essentially the ex-host of Fear Factor, IRL funny man, and online podcaster. He does it all. He also used to do MMA for a little bit. This man is almost as talented as Johnny Sins. But jokes aside, Joe Rogan, he hosts one of the world's most popular, if not the most popular podcast online. And I'm going to give you some preface and some background for this, for me specifically, because I've been watching Joe Rogan since about my senior year of high school in terms of his, podcast. And while I do enjoy it, I do, different opinion from Joe on quite a few subjects. And while I think Joe is genuinely a good guy and he means well, especially with what he said on his podcast and pertaining to video games specifically recently, I don't think what he said was right at all. So if you don't know what he said, this is what he said. Roll it.
They just fucking lay around, and then they seek refuge in drugs or video games or something that stimulates them. And video games are a real problem. They're a real problem. You know why? Because they're fucking fun.
Addictive.
And I have a real problem with them. And you do them, and they're real exciting, but you don't get anywhere.
Right.
It's like you could do like martial arts, right? You could learn jujitsu. You get obsessed by jujitsu, and then 3 years later, you're like an elite jujitsu athlete. You're entering in competitions. You're a purple belt.
You're moving up.
Yeah, you're doing well. Right. You're thinking I might be able to open my own school one day.
You got confidence.
Yeah, if I have 100 students and those 100 students are paying me X amount of dollars per month, I can make a living. Holy shit, I can have this would be amazing. And then you see your jujitsu school, and your jujitsu instructor has all these students and drives a Mercedes, and he's got a nice family, and that's the future. This way, you're doing something exciting and fun, and or you could just be playing fucking video games. 3 years later, you could be that same kid just playing video games, waiting for the next whatever the fuck game is, next Xbox game to come out, and you're gonna waste your time.
You see, in this video, I think Joe is doing a lot more harm than good, because he's treating video games as a special form of entertainment, enjoyment, and media than everything else when it really isn't. The only difference between video games and many forms of media is that it's active. Outside of that, it's for the most part the same. People use it as a way to escape reality, or just in general, just for their general enjoyment, or just to have fun with friends. Gaming isn't something that's inherently dangerous. If that were the case, movies, TV shows, and music would be just as dangerous, if not more dangerous, because of how much more we consume those forms of media. And Joe making the argument that video games are essentially useless in a sense for the average person because it doesn't get them anywhere in quotation marks, I think is so baseless. I don't sit there and watch movies or binge a television show just because I think, this is gonna get me somewhere financially, monetarily, or gonna give me a greater meaning in life. No, I just watched it for enjoyment. And that's how people consume many video games. And yes, Joe talks about their careers in gaming and stuff, and how there are some people who made a ton of money off of gaming, but he boils it down to saying, if you're not good enough, or you're not the top 0.1%, essentially saying if you're not really, really good, or top tier or best in the world at a game, it's essentially a waste, which is kind of ridiculous because there are more careers and jobs in the gaming industry than just being good at video games. Many people create content online, and you don't have to be the best. You could just be good. On top of that, you could just be entertaining. Well, YouTube isn't a career for me per se, it is a fun hobby, and then on top of that, I could possibly make it a career if I dedicated enough time to it. And I'm not really amazing at video games. I'm your average Joe playing most of these games. And that's the case for many YouTubers, streamers, and content creators. Most of them are just average at their games. Many of them aren't good at the games at all. Some of them, or even a lot of them, are just bad. And sometimes that's what attracts people. Sometimes people are really good at analyzing video games, or talking about them, or talking about the industry, or analyzing the industry, or just covering the news on video games. You don't have to be an expert journalist to just talk about gaming news or just news in general. And that's where I kind of take fault with Joe's statement, or that's the biggest area, or not the biggest area, but that's one of the more prominent areas I take fault with Joe's statement. The second part is really where he states that it's dangerous because they're fun, they're great, and because they're fun, they're dangerous because you can get addicted to them, and it rolls back around to them being useless in a sense. That, you won't get anywhere with video games because they're so addicting and so they get you enthralled with them, which isn't the case. Again, it's your fault. I feel like it's your fault if you cannot, control yourself with something like that. It's like if I sat here and watched 20 hours of The Office, say for instance, it's only my fault that I sat there and watched 20 hours of The Office or Dragon Ball a day. That addiction is something that I need to break myself. It's not a fault of the show, and Joe needs to realize that. Now, if you don't know, Joe has actually talked about his addiction personally with video games. And again, I'm not trying to bash him or saying, it's wrong to be addicted to video games in a sense, or, you should feel bad about it. But what I'm saying is you need to find help yourself, and you need to find a way to make yourself better and make it so that you have the self-control to know when it's okay to stop. You need to know how to moderate things. And Joe himself has said on multiple times that he can't moderate himself. The most recent time I can think of is when he had Hannibal Buress on the podcast. And Hannibal was actually talking about his gambling addiction and talking about how gambling had almost ruined him, taking all his money, all his life savings, and he had to learn how to stop. And Joe was like, yeah, man, I'm the same way with video games. He said, one of the games that really does it to him are games like Quake and these competitive shooters where he gets so invested and he plays so much of them that he loses himself and he loses track of time, and it winds up getting him nowhere because he's playing them so much it's become a detriment to other parts of his life. Even talking about how him and his producer Jamie would play, and Jamie would stop and then be like, yo, Joe, you have a problem, dude, you gotta stop. And then Joe's like egging him on to come back and play more of the game. I don't want to sit here and, vilify you, Joe, or anybody who has like a video game addiction or an addiction of any kind. What I'm saying is you need to get help. You need to recognize that the thing that you're addicted to doesn't have power over you. And it's hard to overcome addiction. It's not something that's easy. Because first of all, you got to recognize that you have an addiction, which Joe has recognized. You got to find help. Video games themselves aren't inherently dangerous. It's like me saying that television shows are inherently dangerous because I sat there and binged, 10 hours of, Supernatural or, whatever anime is out every day. That's not the television show's fault. That's my fault. And I've got to fix it for myself. I don't know. That's just how I feel about this entire situation. Because while I do feel like Joe meant to do good and meant to, he was being really genuine with what he was saying, and his heart was in the right place, I really feel what he said was bad, and it was actually kind of destructive in the way it approached specifically video games, because they've been such a controversial, in quotation marks, medium for the past, 30, 40, 50 years, despite them really not needing to be controversial. Again, that's just me. Do you disagree with me? Do you agree with Joe? I know there's some people who are 100% on board with Joe, saying, yo, he's 100% correct. Video games are a problem, and I can't get on the boat with that. I just feel like if you can't control yourself, it's not the video game's fault. It's your fault. That's not to be mean. That's just to say that you got to have some self-control. You got to know how to moderate. Again, that's just from the guy talking behind the microphone with some gameplay up on the screen. But guys, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Buy merch. Links are down in the description, please. It's like the first link down there. I put it there for a reason. Make sure you follow your boy on Twitter at MobShadik100. It's free to follow your boy on Twitter, and make sure you join the channel as a member. It's only $2 a month. Also, again, if you haven't hit that subscribe button, hit that subscribe button to stay updated. But this has been your man Shadix. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Share this video out with your friends. If you'd like me to do more videos like this or talk about more general gaming topics and things happening in the gaming space, let me know in that comment section below. This is your man Shadix. Avataryaya turns to Kobuzaga. Make sure you chill out some of my other videos. Peace, kiss, kiss.